This is gravy, chocolate gravy. Cocoa and sugar and a little flour, cooked down like you'd make sawmill gravy, poured hot over a split biscuit. And if you didn't come up in these mountains, you have likely never heard of it, and that's a sorrow. Ma made it of a Sunday morning, and I can smell it yet. Here's the twist. Number 12 is a jar of green beans that can kill a grown man, and the way she put 'em up is exactly the danger. Number 9 is a trick everybody swears saves a too salty soup, and I'll show you it does next to nothing. And number 1 isn't a recipe at all. It's what you cook and carry to a house where somebody has just died. Let's count down 25 more cooking tricks Ma never wrote down. Number 25, reading the oven with your hand. There was no dial on a wood cook stove and no thermometer in that kitchen, and she baked bread and cakes and pies out of it that came out right every time because she could read the heat with the back of her hand. She'd open the oven and hold her hand in there and count. If she had to pull it out about the count of 5, that was a moderate oven, your bread heat. Snatched it back quicker, too hot, let the fire die back. Could hold it a good while, too slow, feed the fire. Some read it by throwing a pinch of flour on the floor of the oven and watching how fast it browned. The failure was trusting a guess instead of the count. She counted every time, same count, and her hand was the gauge because she'd calibrated it over 40 years of biscuits. A modern oven does it with a dial. She did it with the nerves in her hand. Number 24, milking the corn cob. Fried corn in that kitchen was creamy and thick, and there was not a drop of cream in it. The secret was in the cob. She'd cut the kernels off, and then, this is the part people skip, she took the back of the knife and scraped down that bare cob hard, both hands, and out came a white, starchy milk, the heart of the corn that the cutting left behind. That went in the skillet with the kernels, and as it cooked, it thickened the whole mess into something like creamed corn on its own. Skip the scraping, and you've thrown away the best of it, and you're left with dry, loose kernels. And then folks reach for a cup of cream to fix what they poured down the slop bucket. There was a little tool for it, a corn creamer, but she did it with a butter knife, and never once needed the cream. Number 23, a broom straw for a cake tester. Before there was a toothpick in a little box, she tested a cake with a straw pulled off the kitchen broom. The broom was broom corn, and a single straw off it is stiff and clean and just waxy enough that wet batter shows on it plain and then wipes right off. So one straw lasted her a whole day of baking. She'd pull it, stick it in the middle of the cake, and if it come out clean, the cake was done. And if it come out gummy, it went back in. The one rule was you tested in the middle and nowhere else, because the edges set long before the center does. Test the edge and you'll pull a cake that's raw in the heart of it. They still sell broom corn cake testers up at the craft fairs, and they work as good as anything in a drawer. Number 22, scalding the milk. Every old bread receipt tells you to scald the milk and let it cool before you ever start. And near everybody today skips it, and their bread is the worse for it, and they don't know why. You heat the milk till it's just about to boil, little skin forming, then let it come back down to warm. They tell me there's a thing in raw milk that fights the bread, weakens the very stuff that lets a loaf hold its rise, and the heat kills it off, so a scalded milk loaf comes up higher and softer. It matters less with the store milk now, since that's already been heated once, but the old cows gave it raw, and it mattered a lot. Scald it and forget to cool it though, and you'll pour hot milk on your yeast and kill it dead, and your bread won't rise at all. Warm, not hot. Number 21, 2 waters for the bitter greens. The wild spring greens ran bitter, some of them, and the toughest and most bitter ones she cooked in 2 waters. Boil them once, pour that water off entire, cover with fresh, and boil again. That first water carries the bitter out with it. The sharp stuff in a bitter green dissolves into the boiling water. One study I heard of found near all of it leaches out. So the whole trick is you pour that water down the drain and don't look back. Pour it off, and what's left is mild and good. Now here's the plain safety of it. Poke was the one folks cooked this way, 2 and 3 waters, and I'll tell you straight, the doctors now say leave poke alone entirely because the 2 waters trick cuts the poison down but doesn't take it all. For your dandelion and your cress, it's a fine trick. For poke, know that it was never as safe as they believed. Number 20, a pinch of soda in the bean pot. Hard water and old dry beans could cook all day and stay like gravel. And her fix was a pinch, a real pinch, no more, of baking soda in the pot. The soda makes the water alkaline, and alkaline water breaks down the tough part of the bean's skin and softens it far faster. 1/8 of a teaspoon to a pound of beans, no more than that, and they give up and go tender. But this one you can wreck easy, and here's both ways. Too much soda and the beans go to mush and turn slick and soapy tasting. And worse, that alkaline water washes out a good part of the vitamins, the B especially. So it's a pinch when the water's hard or the beans are old. Not a spoonful every time. A little help, not a habit. That's everyday cooking. From here down it's a baking and a putting up, where a mistake costs you a whole batch, or worse. If you cook it all, subscribe. I put one of these up every few days. Number 19, the wood cook stove and its hot corners. A wood cook stove has no knobs, and cooking on one was a dance across the top of it, and that dance is a skill gone near completely. The top wasn't one heat. Right over the firebox it was screaming hot, for searing and for getting a pan going, and it cooled off steady the further you slid a pot toward the far end. So she'd move a thing from a hard boil down to a bare simmer just by walking it a foot across the stove top. And up above was the warming shelf, the closet, where rising heat kept the biscuits warm and a bowl of dough rose gentle. The failure was a fire let go too hot or too low. Because you couldn't turn it down, you could only move the pot or feed the fire. Reading that stove and playing it was a whole craft, and there's not one cook in 1,000 now could bake a day's meals on one. Number 18, keeping your own yeast alive. Before you could buy yeast in a little packet, and that wasn't so long ago. A cook kept her own going, alive, on the back of the stove, and her mother kept one for years. You made it out of a boiled potato and its water and a little sugar, and sometimes hops thrown in, and the wild yeast off the air and the flour took up in that and grew, and you fed it and used it and fed it again. The hops were the trick in the ones that lasted. They hold off the souring bugs, so the yeast keeps clean, where an unhopped one turns on you sooner. Let it get too cold or forget to feed it a week and it dies, and then there's no light bread in the house till you catch a new one going. A live yeast was a thing a household could not let die, same as the fire. Number 17, sifting the flour, and why. Every cake receipt she had said to sift the flour, and to sift it twice for the fine cakes, and most people now dump it out of the bag and wonder why theirs comes out heavy. The flour settled and packed down hard in the barrel and the sack, and sifting fluffs the air back into it so a cup measures true and light instead of dense. And for a delicate cake, it scatters the leavening even all through, so the whole thing rises level instead of in knots. Now I'll be honest, this one matters less than it did. The flour you buy now comes fine and even out of the bag, and for everyday cooking, you can skip it. But for an angel cake, the kind that lives or dies on being light, she sifted, and she was right to. Number 16, a grape leaf in the pickle crock. Her pickles came out of the crock crisp, snapping crisp, and one of the things she swore by was a grape leaf laid down in the crock with them. Some used an oak leaf or horseradish. There's a real thing in it. The leaf carries a tannin, same bitter stuff that's in strong tea, and that tannin holds back the little enzyme that turns a pickle soft and slimy. So the leaf worked, but here's the honest part. Because the extension people have looked close at this. That softening enzyme lives mostly in the blossom end of the cucumber, the little scar where the flower was. And if you just cut a sliver off that end, you've taken out the trouble at the source and you don't need the leaf at all. So she was right that it worked. She just never knew the leaf was doing the hard way what a paring knife does in 1 second. Number 15, the cold oven pound cake. Here's one that sounds backwards, and isn't. For a pound cake, she put it in a cold oven, cold, and then lit it and let the cake and the oven come up to heat together. A cake shoved into an already hot oven sets its edges fast while the middle's still raw, and it domes and cracks. Coming up slow from cold, the whole cake rises gentle and even, and it climbs higher for it. The test kitchens have measured near an inch taller, with a fine even crumb and a good crisp crust. The failure is opening the door to peeking the first while before it's set and slamming the rise right back down. You leave it be. Cold oven, light it, and don't you dare open that door till it's near done. Number 14, beaten biscuits. Here's a biscuit with no soda, no powder, no yeast, nothing to raise it at all. And it was the fancy biscuit, the company biscuit. You raised it by beating it. You make a stiff, hard dough, and then you beat it with a mallet, or run it through a roller called a brake, over and over, folding and beating, a couple 100 times for the family and 500 for company, they used to say. All that beating works air into the dough and builds up the strength in it. And in the oven, that trapped air and steam is the only thing that lifts it into a hard, pale, blistered little biscuit that'll keep a week. Quit beating too soon and it comes out a flat, dense rock. It is more work than any biscuit has a right to be, which is exactly why serving them said you thought your company was worth it. Number 13, knowing when the jelly's done. Making jelly, the whole game is one moment, the set, and she knew it by the way it came off the spoon. No thermometer, no store pectin. She'd lift the spoon and let it run off, and while it was watery, it dripped in drops. But the second it was ready, 2 drops would run together and slide off the edge in a little sheet, a curtain, instead of drops. That sheeting was done. Some tested it by dropping a spot on a cold saucer and nudging it with a thumb, and if it rankled, it was set. The number under it, for anybody who wants it, is 220 degrees, 8 above boiling water, and a touch lower up high in the mountains. Miss it short, and you've got syrup that won't set. Cook it past, and you've got rubber. She hit it by the sheet off a spoon every single time. Number 12. Canning like Grandma did can kill you. Now I have to stop and be dead serious, because this is the one on the list that has actually put people in the ground, and it's still done the old way in these hills. Ma canned green beans and corn and meat in a boiling water bath, or worse, hot out of the pot straight into the jar with a lid of wax on top. And here's a terrible thing nobody knew back then. There's a poison, botulism, that grows only where there's no air, inside a sealed jar, and only in low-acid food, like beans and corn and meat. And the thing that makes it is a spore that a boiling water bath does not kill. It lives right through the boil. Then it grows in that sealed jar, and it makes a toxin with no taste and no smell, and a few forkfuls can kill you. And it has killed whole families off their own canned beans. Here's what we know now that she didn't. Low-acid food, beans, corn, any meat, has to be canned in a pressure canner, because only that gets hot enough to kill the spore. The wax top and the open kettle and the plain water bath are for the acid things only. Your pickles and your jams and your tomatoes with a little lemon added. It's the hardest thing on this whole channel to say that Ma's green beans could have killed us, but it's true, and the fix is written down and free, and I'd rather you have it than have her memory. Number 11, pectin out of apple cores. Store pectin in a box is a new thing. She said her jelly with the apples themselves, and mostly with the parts you'd throw away. The peels and the cores and the green underripe apples are where the pectin lives, thick, and it's pectin that makes a jelly gel. So she'd simmer down a pot of apple scraps and green apples, strain off the cloudy liquid, and that liquid was her pectin, cooked into a batch of some other fruit that wouldn't set on its own to make it gel. The catch is, ripe fruit has lost most of it. Pectin fades as the fruit ripens, so you want them cores from tart, firm, underripe apples, not soft, sweet ones. It's the same stuff they cook the box pectin out of, apple skins and citrus. She just never paid a dime for it. Number 10, a cake with no eggs at all. There were times there wasn't an egg to be had, hard times, and she could still put a chocolate cake on the table, raised up light, with no egg in it. The trick is vinegar and soda. You put a little vinegar in the batter and a spoon of baking soda, and the two hit each other and foam up carbon dioxide, the same gas an egg's whipping would have given you, and that gas raises the cake. It bakes out sour entirely, no vinegar taste left, just a light, tender crumb. Folks called it a wacky cake or a depression cake because that's when it was born, when eggs and butter were dear or gone. Use too much soda reaching for more rise and you'll taste it. A soapy bite. A spoon of each, no more. A cake out of nearly nothing, and a good one. Number 9. The potato in the salty soup. That doesn't work. Here's one everybody's grandmother did, and I'm going to tell you the truth on it because this channel tells you the truth. You've salted the soup too heavy, so you drop a raw potato in to draw the salt back out. She did it, I did it. It does next to nothing. Somebody finally went and tested it proper, and a potato cannot pull the salt out of a soup. All it does is soak up some of the salty broth like a sponge, salt and all, and take a little volume with it. It's not pulling the salt, it's just carrying off a spoonful of soup. What actually fixes a too salty pot is dull, and it works. You add more water or unsalted broth and thin it. You add bulk, more beans or potatoes, to eat, not to fish out, or a little vinegar or a pinch of sugar to trick the tongue. The potato was a comfort more than a cure, and now you know. Number 8, bringing stale bread back. Bread went stale in that house same as any, but it never went to waste because she knew stale isn't spoiled. It's just dried and stiffened, and that you can undo. Sprinkle a hard loaf with a little water and put it in a warm oven a few minutes, and it comes back soft and fresh because the staling is the starch stiffening up, and a bit of heat and damp loosens it right back. Only mind, it turns stale again faster after, so you do it for the meal in front of you, not to keep. And what was too far gone for that became bread pudding, or the dressing for a chicken, or crumbs, or milk toast for a sick child. The one thing stale bread never was garbage. A cook who let bread hit the slop bucket was a cook who didn't know these tricks. Number 7. Tempering the eggs. Boiled custard, the old Christmas kind, will turn on you in a heartbeat into sweet scrambled eggs if you do it wrong. And she never once did it wrong, because she tempered. You've got your beaten eggs, and you cannot just pour them into the hot milk, or they seize up and scramble, because egg sets hard the second it hits real heat. So you go slow. You dip a little of the hot milk and whisk it into the cold eggs to warm them up gentle, then a little more, and only once they're warmed do you pour the whole works back into the pot. Warm them into it, don't shock them. Get impatient and dump the eggs in cold, and you'll have curds floating in your custard and no saving it. Slow and a little at a time. That's the whole secret to a smooth custard. Number 6, whipping the whites. She could whip egg whites into a stiff white cloud by hand with a fork and a crock for an angel cake or a meringue, and there were 2 or 3 things she knew that made it go. A little pinch of something sour helped them stiffen and hold. She used a bit of cream of tartar, and the acid in it steadies the foam so it don't weep and fall. Some old cooks whipped in a copper bowl, and there's a real reason. Something in the copper firms the whites up the same way. And the hard rule, the one that'll beat you every time, not one speck of grease or a single drop of the yolk can get in, or those whites will not stiffen no matter how long you beat, and you start over with a clean bowl. Whip them too far though, and they go dry and curdled and break, stiff and glossy, and stop. Number 5, larding the lean meat. A wild thing has no fat on it to speak of, and Paul's venison would cook up dry as a chip if you didn't do something, and the something was larding. You take strips of fat back, salt pork, and you thread them right down into the lean roast with a long needle, or you wrap the whole outside in fat, which they called barding. Then as it cooks, that fat melts and bastes the meat from the inside and the outside both, and a dry cut comes out juicy that would have been leather. The failure is cooking a lean wild roast naked and fast. It'll be gray and dry clear through, and no gravy will save it. Fat threaded through it and low, slow heat. That's how a mountain family made a deer eat like a beef. Number 4, cooking by ear and by nose. She cooked with her ears and her nose as much as her eyes, and that's a thing you only get one way, by standing at a stove 10 thorns times. She knew the chicken was frying right by the sound of it, a steady, busy sizzle, not a violent spitting and not a quiet near silence. And she'd reach over and adjust the fire by that sound without ever looking in the pan. And she knew a cake was done by the smell of it before the straw ever went in. That turn where the raw batter smell goes to baked and just before it goes to burnt. That smell would bring her across the kitchen. You cannot write that down. Steady sizzle and the smell right before burnt. I can tell you the words, but her ears and her nose had 40 years I can't hand you. Number 3, chocolate gravy. Number 3 is the one from the very top, and it's my favorite thing on this whole list. Chocolate gravy over hot biscuits, a Sunday morning in the mountains. You make it exactly like a milk gravy, only sweet. Cocoa, sugar, and flour whisked smooth. Then milk stirred in and cooked on the stove till it thickens up glossy, and a lump of butter off the heat. You split a hot biscuit open and you pour that over it, and it soaks in, and it is breakfast and dessert at once, and a child would about come out of his skin for it. Nobody rightly knows where it came from. Some say old Spanish trade coming up through the South. Some say it showed up when cocoa first hit the country stores. I don't know, and I won't make something up because that's not what we do here. What I know is it is real, it is ours, it's in near no cookbook, and outside these mountains, hardly a soul has heard of it. The lump and the whisking are the whole skill. Quit whisking, and it goes to lumps. Scorch it, and it's ruined. Low and slow, and keep it moving, and pour it while it's hot. Number 2, there's always room for one more. The plainest trick in that kitchen wasn't a trick at all. It was that the pot always stretched, and nobody who came to the door left hungry, ever. A pot of soup beans went on the stove, and it fed the family. And if kin or a neighbor or a stranger down on his luck showed up at supper, you didn't cook more. You added water and another potato or two, and you set another plate, and somehow there was enough. It was always enough. A mountain woman could feed 2 extra off a pot meant for 6, and you'd never know anybody went short. That's not a recipe you can measure. It's a way of cooking that started from the belief that you feed whoever's in front of you, and the pot obeyed the belief. My daughters were raised on it, and their children are, and it's about the finest thing that kitchen ever taught, that there is always room for one more. Number 1, the food you carry to a grieving house. Here's the last one, and it's the one Ma would have said was the most important thing she ever did in a kitchen, and she'd have been right. When somebody died on our mountain, the women cooked. Before the body was cold, there were casseroles and hams and cakes and fried chicken moving up the road to that house, dish after covered dish, and it kept up for days. And it was never about the food, not really. A grieving family cannot cook and should not have to, and so the whole community reached in and fed them, took that one weight off, and by feeding them, said the thing that's too big to say out loud: we've got you. You're not alone in this. We are grieving too. That's the deepest cooking there is, and it's the oldest. It goes back past the covered dish to the funeral biscuit. Hundreds of years, women meeting death the only way they had, with their hands and a hot dish. Ma cooked for every grieving house on that mountain for 50 years, and when she went, they cooked for us. And I stood in a kitchen full of other women's casseroles and understood it from the inside for the first time. That's the thing that actually matters under all the tricks. A recipe is just how you feed somebody, why you feed them, to celebrate, to welcome a stranger, to carry a family through the worst day of their lives. That's the part that was never written down, because everybody knew it in their bones. And it's the part I most don't want us to lose. They knew. Now it's written down. Here's my challenge. Pick one and go do it this week. Scrape the cob into your fried corn and taste what you've been throwing out. Make a pan of chocolate gravy on a Sunday, or the next time somebody you know loses somebody, cook a dish and carry it over. And don't stay, just leave it. Then tell me in the comments. And I want the specific thing. What did your grandmother make that never got written down? The dish, the trick, the thing she did by feel. Whose was it? And what county did she cook in? I'm trying to get it down before it's gone. Because none of this was ever written. It lived in one woman's hands at a time. And it went in the ground with her, over and over, all up and down these mountains. And most of it is gone and not coming back. But not all of it, not if we write it down. They knew. Now it's written down.